Joe Biden gave a 60 Minutes interview recently, with the obvious news being that he was able to stay conscious for 60 minutes. When they arrived at the studio, Kamala Harris also apparently asked how long the show would be. During the interview, CBS's Scott Pelley broached an uncomfortable subject for most politicians, but especially Joe Biden. Is he up to it mentally?
You are the oldest president ever.
Pretty good shape, huh?
Which leads to my next question. You are more aware of this than anyone. Some people ask whether you are fit for the job. And when you hear that, I wonder what you think.
Watch me. I mean, honest to God, that's all I think. Watch me. If you think I don't have the energy level or the mental acuity, then that's one thing. It's another thing of just watch and keep my schedule. Do what I'm doing. I think that, I don't, when I sit down with our NATO allies and keep them together, I don't have them saying, wait a minute, how old are you? What did they say? It's a matter of, that old expression, the proof of the pudding's in the eating. I mean, I respect the fact that people would say, you're old. But I think it relates to how much energy you have and whether or not the job you're doing is one consistent with what any person of any age would be able to do.
The problem here is that the pudding Joe Biden is serving up is, what's the word? Crazy. This is where it would be far too easy to throw out some red meat and post yet another compilation of Joe Biden's mental decline. You know what, screw it, roll the tape.
The rapidly rising I am very willing to let the American public judge my physical and mental my physical as well as my mental fitness. Welcome to Kingswood Community Center. Actually, that's the one down I used to work. As a joke. You didn't know where we were. Anyway. Employers can't find workers. I said, yeah, pay them more. You gotta say hi to me. We go back a long way. She was 12, I was 30, but anyway. We hold these truths to be self-evident. All men and women created by you know the thing.
But while it's obviously fun to mock politicians we don't like, that's not what I'm talking about. No, what I'm talking about is something that's really important, that mental fitness is completely ignored in our society when it comes to politicians. More specifically, whenever we talk about mental fitness, we immediately wind up talking about physical fitness, even though they have almost nothing to do with each other. In the 60 Minutes interview, when Scott Pelley asked Biden if he's mentally focused, he immediately started bumbling about age again.
How would you say your mental focus is?
Oh, it's focused. I have trouble even saying to myself my own head the number of years. I no more think of myself as being as old as I am than fly. I mean, it's just not, I haven't observed anything in terms of, there's not things I don't do now that I did before, whether it's physical or mental or anything else.
But just because someone feels not old doesn't make it true or relevant. How Joe Biden feels doesn't change the reality of this particular before and after clip.
What disturbs me more than the policy that you call a policy is the rationale for the policy.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. But
Joe Biden keeps getting away with what can only be described as the worst bait and switch in political history. Not only does the mainstream media not care that he's governing like a radical after campaigning as a moderate, they're ignoring that his mental health is falling apart. Yeah, it might be politically convenient, but that doesn't change the fact that not only is mental fitness important when it comes to our leaders, it's the most important thing there is. Think about it. What are the key skills needed to be a successful politician, beyond fraud and sexual deviancy? Communication, reasoning, planning. All of these require your mind, but our society remains focused on physical health alone. Now, Joe Biden seems kind of healthy physically, considering his age, especially if there's a prepubescent child within sniffing range. And that's all Biden and his cronies focus on whenever the subject of mental fitness comes up. How is Biden mentally unfit? Look, he's riding his bike. He's jogging upstairs. He has a firm handshake. Okay, 1, monkeys can ride bikes. 2, so what? Except for leveraging BLM and Antifa, politics isn't physical. It exists in the realm of the mind. Thoughts and words which then lead to action. And those responsible for forming and expressing those thoughts and words are supposed to be our elected officials. So it matters that their brains are working. So who cares if Joe Biden can ride a bike if the lights are on but nobody's home?
Mr. President, thank you. At the end of such a momentous event, the word thank you seems kind of inadequate. But for all the millions whose lives will be saved, for the communities where life will be transformed, thank you. So thank you, President Biden.
Now, when certain leaders are in office, the mainstream media are all too happy to argue correctly that mental health matters. Take Donald Trump, for instance. During his presidency, USA Today reported that Trump's cognitive deficits seem worse, and that one psychologist said that we need to know if he has dementia. The Guardian reported that Steve Bannon, who is sporadically trustworthy based on how useful his comments are to the left, said that Trump had early-stage dementia, according to a TV producer. And then there's Harvard-bound russet potato Brian Stelter, who said that we can't tiptoe around Trump's mental instability, while for Biden, Stelter said it was offensive and otherworldly to question his mental health.
Look at what Fox News saw on Saturday at Rehoboth Beach, Delaware. This is Joe Biden out there on a vigorous bike ride. Not wearing a helmet, but definitely wearing a mask, by the way. Fox's narrative and talk radio's narrative for months has been that Joe Biden is falling apart. You just heard Ben Shapiro say it, falling apart. And there he is riding a bike.
But people will right to question Trump's mental fitness. Not because I think he was mentally unfit to serve, but because mental fitness is all that matters. Except for politics, every worker on the planet is judged based on their skills relating to their job. We judge LeBron James on his basketball prowess, not what book he's pretending to read that week. We judge our plumbers on their ability to fix our broken sink, not how fast they can solve this week's Wordle. And we judge our dentists on whether they can drill into the right tooth, not how accurately they can recite Cardi B's latest song. So why do we judge our politicians on their ability to jog or play sports or ride a bike when those skills have nothing to do with the job? And why do we ignore mental fitness like it's a taboo subject when it has everything to do with the job? And this is a problem that goes far beyond Joe Biden. There's John Fetterman, who recently suffered from a stroke and can't put a sentence together and yet might win his Senate race in Pennsylvania. There's Nancy Pelosi, who regularly experiences what is known in the medical community as a brain fart. And there's a pharmacist who said he'd fill prescriptions for Alzheimer's medication for members of Congress. This is also a historical problem. Woodrow Wilson had a serious stroke in 1919, leaving him prone to disorders of emotion, impaired impulse control, and defective judgment. And his wife basically acted as an unelected president from that point until his term ended in 1921, keeping the entire country in the dark. She was the Jill Biden of her time. And what's the outcome of all this? It means we risk handing over vast amounts of power to people whose mental fitness rests on us taking their word for it. Take the NFL. For any player to even have a chance of playing professional football, they have to go through countless medical and physical examinations. Just like slavery, if you're Colin Kaepernick, an all-to-play game where you put on a helmet, throw a ball around, and ignore the almost constant levels of brain damage in exchange for entertainment. Why don't we do the same for politicians? Why don't we have consistent and non-partisan testing when it comes to the mental health of our leadership? If you like a car at the dealership, do you trust the salesman when he promises that the smoke coming from the exhaust is a design feature? No, you at least take the car for a test drive. So why, when it comes to our politicians, and they promise us that they're totally fine, do we just shrug and say, okay then? Why don't we at least give them a Sudoku to finish before letting them put their shaky fingers on the nuclear button? Joe Biden is the obvious example, but this is a bipartisan problem that both sides are ignoring when it suits them. Yeah, it's really easy to post videos of the politician you dislike showing potential signs of mental decline, but it's just as easy to ignore potential signs of mental decline shown by a politician you like. Right now, conservatives are enraged that someone like Joe Biden, who can't even find his way off a stage, holds the highest office in the land. But no one wanted to hear concerns about conservative figures like Donald Trump, Ronald Reagan, or John McCain. Yes, some of those concerns were cynical and even fictional at times, but that doesn't make the underlying question unimportant. At the same time, Democrats are basically refusing to acknowledge that Joe Biden is suffering from dementia, after spending years labeling any Republican they can find as mentally unfit. I'm not just talking about Donald Trump or the examples I mentioned earlier. The same deep concerns about mental fitness were raised about George Bush, Gerald Ford, Clarence Thomas, all while Republicans refuse to hear any of it, whether appropriately or not. all while there were no checks and balances for the one factor that matters most: actual mental fitness. So, what's the solution here? Well, if we can't have an NFL combine for politicians, which, let's be honest, would be amazing, can we at least have a routine and regular exam with public results performed by a non-partisan entity, if those even exist anymore, to demonstrate that those who hold the literal power of life and death over the entire country know the difference between their sister and their wife? But of course, none of this can happen until we understand that mental fitness is all that matters when it comes to politicians. I don't care whether politicians, Republican or Democrat, can throw a baseball or do a pull-up or ride a bike. I care if their brain works. Because when China and Russia are knocking at the door, we need more in our back pocket than an actual curveball. Thanks for watching. If you like that clip, subscribe to our YouTube channel, where you can watch full episodes and other clips just like this one. Make sure you ring the bell for notifications and tell all your friends about it.